Matt Whalen here with another edition of Old Farts Talkin' Tech. Today, it's a beautiful, cloudless, sunny day in Southern California in March. And the topic of today's conversation is solar energy, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So before I get into the nitty-gritty details of my solar power setup, let me give a little background. Our electrical provider in this part of Southern California is San Diego Gas and Electric. Over the past few years, our monthly electric bills have been steadily increasing, partly due to higher energy costs, but also to pay for the decommissioning of the San Onofre nuclear power plant located about 10 miles away. I've been thinking about installing solar panels for a while, since our house is ideally suited for them. We have a backyard roof that faces southwest, and we have an unobstructed view of the sky. So I decided to pull the trigger on solar panels in early 2024, and I also had a whole house battery installed as a backup, so we can use that if and when we get power failures. To give you an idea of what we were spending on electricity before our solar panel installation, here's a typical bill from 2023. As you can see, our monthly cost ranged from about $200 to over $400. Over a 12-month period, our electricity consumption ranged from a low of around 500 kilowatt hours in June to a high of almost 800 kilowatt hours in December and January. We're hoping to significantly reduce this with a solar panel system. Now, let's talk about the components of our photovoltaic power system. The solar panels are manufactured by QCell, Model Q Peak Duo ML G10 plus 400. There are 18 panels arranged in a 6x3 grid on a southwest-facing roof with a maximum output of 7,200 watts. The inverter that converts solar power DC voltage into usable AC voltage house power is from SolarEdge, model SE7600H, with a rated AC output power of 7,600 watts. This unit also directs the output of the solar panels to the appropriate destination, house AC, whole house battery charging, or electrical power grid, depending on time of day and electrical power needs. I'll have lots more to say about this in a bit. The final main component is a whole house battery. This is a lithium-ion LG RESU 10H prime battery with a usable output of 9.6 kilowatt hours. Based on the current electricity pricing schedule set up by San Diego Gas and Electric, this battery is intended to supply power to the house during peak grid usage times of the day between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. as an additional way of minimizing electricity costs. This whole system became operational in January of 2024. One nice feature of the SolarEdge inverter is that it connects to the house Wi-Fi system, and through the My SolarEdge app on an Apple or Android device, you're able to get real-time readouts of how the system is functioning and data like how much power the solar panels are producing and how that power is being distributed among the house, the battery, and to the electrical grid. The last option is used to reduce our electricity bill since we are supplying energy to the grid instead of consuming it. Now, a bit of the ugly part of solar. The electricity suppliers in California are a powerful lobby, and over the years have persuaded lawmakers in Sacramento to tip the solar energy scales in their favor. As it stands now, a kilowatt of electricity I supply to the grid is worth less than 1/3 of what I get charged for pulling a kilowatt from the grid. But I still see this as a worthwhile exercise to achieve some small bit of independence from the electrical utility grid. So here's the cumulative results from our first year's operation. The dark green part of the bar graph shows the monthly electrical power that went directly to the house AC. The light green shows the power that went to the charging of the battery, and the blue is the amount of electrical power delivered back to the grid. Since the system wasn't fully online until the end of January, the bar graph for that month is the lowest. But the rest of the year looks about as expected, with July and August generating the most output. When I look at the same type of graph for the following year, 2025, I see something weird happening. The combined power production for the months of November and December are significantly lower than for the same 2 months in 2024. To figure out why required a fair amount of digging on my part, but I finally uncovered the ugly truth. The SolarEdge inverter was cutting out intermittently and reducing the amount of power available from the solar panels. The next two graphs show exactly what's going wrong. The first graph shows in green the amount of electrical power production in kilowatts from the solar panel array as a function of time during the day. For a sunny, cloudless day in Southern California, you'd expect the graph to look like a bell curve, with the maximum production occurring around midday. However, in November of 2025, the daily output graph began to look erratic, with periods around midday where the power production dropped to 0, even though the sun was out. When I noticed this pattern, I contacted the solar installer, who will remain nameless at this point, who sent out a technician to troubleshoot. After performing several system resets, which I could have done, he told me just wait a while and things will get better. Somehow I was skeptical that this was a self-healing electrical system, so I kicked things up a notch and contacted SolarEdge directly. Their response? Based on the remote check of the system, everything looked normal. Of course, anyone with any engineering experience knows that trying to catch an intermittent problem is a nearly impossible task. Not to mention that every time SolarEdge did a system check, it was nighttime. This was when I decided I had to use my old fart engineering skills and demonstrate unequivocally that their system was crapping out. Arduino to the rescue. I figured the best way to demonstrate that the solar inverter wasn't working right was to get an independent measurement of the solar intensity during the day and compare that to what the solar panels were actually delivering. This is a diagram of the Arduino circuit I built to do just that. It consists of 3 components: a photodiode to measure raw solar intensity, a micro SD card to record solar intensity measurements, and an Arduino microprocessor to coordinate things. For the first component, I used a photodiode chip that I salvaged from an old smartwatch system. Photodiodes are used in smartwatches to measure pulse rate by detecting brightness changes in skin tone related to blood flow. It's a simple device that outputs a voltage as a function of the amount of light incident on its surface. The brighter the light, the higher the output voltage. I connected the photodiode to an Arduino analog input port terminated with a 10 kiloohm resistor to dampen some of the electrical noise coming from the photodiode. In addition, I programmed the Arduino to take about 100 measurements a minute and then average them to further smooth out the response. To store each measurement, I used a micro SD card adapter module for the Arduino. This was very easy to attach, as shown, and the Arduino micro SD library routines made it simple to set it up to log each minute's worth of data as a numerical text list. Finally, To power the whole thing, I used the 5-volt USB power from an external USB battery. There is a small catch to using the external battery. When I first assembled the components and programmed the Arduino, everything worked fine for about 5 minutes, and then it shut down. I couldn't figure out why it was doing that until I started measuring the power consumption of the circuit. Using a USB charger doctor device, I saw that when powered on, this device was consuming less than a milliamp of current. That's when I discovered that the USB battery was designed to go into shutdown mode if it detected less than a milliamp of current consumption. As a workaround, I attached a 2500 ohm resistor across the plus 5 volt input and ground on the Arduino board so that it would always consume at least 2 milliamps when powered on. Once I did that, the system stayed powered for hours at a time with very little drain on the external battery. Now I was ready to test this against the solar panel output. Here's a photo of the assembled solar intensity monitor. The front view on the left shows a cutout in the plastic case where the photodiode is set up to face the sun, while the side view on the right shows that the photodiode Arduino assembly can be tilted to match the sun angle of the solar panels. The large box on the bottom houses the external USB battery and provides a stable base for the system. This solar intensity monitor is able to run for over 24 hours without needing a recharge to the external battery. Now, let's take a look at how the Arduino solar intensity monitor output compares to the solar panel output reported by the SolarEdge inverter. The top graph here shows the solar intensity from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on a sunny, cloudless day in early March. As you'd expect, once the sun is high enough in the sky, the solar intensity climbs quickly and reaches a peak in the early afternoon, after which it drops quickly after 5 p.m. when the sun starts to set. But wait, the bottom graph from the SolarEdge app shows the same type of intensity increase starting around 10 a.m., but then at around noon, when the solar intensity is at a maximum, the inverter power output suddenly drops to 0 and doesn't recover until after 3 p.m. Something internal to the SolarEdge system is causing it to shut down when the solar panel output is at or close to a maximum. After seeing this pattern repeat over the course of several weeks, I came up with a possible explanation. The inverter electronics, shown here, consist of a bunch of high-density printed circuit boards and high-power current switching components. When the solar panels are delivering close to the maximum amount of current to the inverter, the circuit board controlling where this power is routed heats up, and the box containing this circuit is completely enclosed with no air vent. A common failure mode of modern electronic circuits with small surface mount solder joints is for the solder joints to detach under large temperature swings. This would explain why the inverter circuit suddenly stops producing power under conditions of high current load. After numerous emails with SolarEdge detailing this behavior, they finally agreed to replace the inverter. I'm still waiting for the replacement. In the meantime, I've also discovered that SolarEdge has discontinued this inverter model. I wonder why. So if you're thinking of getting a solar power system and your installer recommends SolarEdge inverters, just say no. As I'm wrapping up this podcast, I'd like to tie up a couple of loose ends. First, in a previous episode, I mentioned an infrared critter cam I built using a GoPro and an array of infrared LEDs. One subscriber asked to see a picture of a critter from this rig. Here is a hefty sized rat that was making his home in our garden shed. R.I.P. Lastly, there's been a lot of discussion of rockets and space in the media lately because of the Artemis II launch and landing. I'd like to add my contribution. This is a video from our backyard of a SpaceX satellite launch out of Vandenberg Space Base in California. It was a particularly clear night, and the launch was just after sunset, resulting in a spectacular display. If you watch carefully, you can even see the reusable booster detach from the main body and start to descend. Enjoy, and see you next time.